Hello, and welcome to the first meeting of the Barbados Genealogy Group for 2025. We greet those of you joining us on Zoom, as well as those on Facebook Live. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure there are so many other things you can be doing at this time. My name is Harriet Pierce, and I am the coordinator for the group. So on behalf of the Barbados Genealogy Group, I want to wish all of you all good things for 2025. Today we welcome Mr. John Knox, who will speak on the topic, Some Genealogies of Early Barbadian Families from St. Lucie and Other Northern Parishes. This is, of course, dear to me because my roots are in the north. As the topic suggests, this evening's session fits neatly into the national initiative Regathering, which has started in St. Lucie and will move on to St. Peter in February. 17th century genealogies of early families from the northern or the Leeward Parishes are probably the most difficult to construct because parochial records do not begin until well into the 18th century for these parishes. The work done by Joanne Sanders on will abstracts from 1639 to 1725 is the best secular record available that allows, in some cases, genealogies of early Barbadian families to be constructed quickly before resorting to the actual wills themselves. In some of the early family histories, various maps of the island, including actual field maps, were used to locate where families lived and to confirm their existence. A great deal can be learned about early Barbados from these maps and plans. John plans to share some of the insights and theories in this presentation. Educated at Harrison College, John won the prestigious Barbados Scholarship and a Dutch government scholarship and earned a bachelor's and master's in electronic engineering and physics. He worked at Intel Limited and at other Intel sites in the US and the Far East. He is a consultant engineer in building services design. He also has experience in the maintenance of various types of equipment, in product development, as well as in the preparation of accurate scale models of Barbados, maps of underground water flow, and various other mapping projects. John enjoys genealogy, which he started from 1994. He is an avid hiker, having started organized hiking in 1988. In fact, the Barbados Hiking Association's Independence Hike for 2024 was held in his honor in recognition of his role as one of the pioneers of hiking in Barbados. John has also started to share his ongoing research via YouTube videos and the blog Bajan Things. So I think we are in for a very informative session today. But just before we hear from John, a little housekeeping. Hold your questions until the end of the presentation. And you can either type your question in the Q&A or use the raise hand feature if you want to ask your question on mic. Any comments or greetings, place those in the chat so it's easier for us to answer the questions. John, you have the mic.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Let me go to my presentation. That's the title, as has been given already. And so I'm looking for what resources exist that can get around the blanks, the holes in the parochial records. There's a census done in 1680. You'll find it, I think by now it's online, but this book, Barbados in America, by D.L. Kent, I found really good. Unfortunately, it's no longer available. He deals with some of the parishes. You can download the Houghton's list that deal with the rest. from the internet. So from D.L. Kent, what you look at baptisms. If you look at baptisms, Christ Church starts in 1637, but St. Lucy starts in 1747. So you're not going to find any records for St. Lucy before 1747. St. Peter starts in 1715. For marriages, 1643 is the earliest it looks like. And in St. George, you're not going to find any before 1801.
John, do you
For
want to
burials,
share your screen? I don't want to cross it, but do you want to share your screen now?
sorry, I don't know what he was doing wrong now. Sorry, I forgot that. View. You should have stopped me earlier. I don't see the share screen now on this. Oh gosh, no. What? Share. Okay, I got it. Got it. Sorry about that. Apologies. Share. Sorry about that. Okay, so that was the first slide. This is second slide. The book by Kent. Houghton's list is available online. And we were talking about the holes in the parochial records. Baptisms, 1637 for Christ Church, and St. Lucy, 1747. Marriages, 1801 for St. George. Burials, looks like the 1748 for St. Lucy. So you're not getting any records from St. Lucy before 1747. An interesting thing that is dealt with in this first page on the from Kent is that I didn't know at 1629 these are the parishes that were first set up, followed in 1645 by 5 more: St. George, St. Philip, etc. If you look at the map, St. Lucy, St. Peter, St. James, St. Michael, Christ Church were set up first, and St. Thomas. And then in 1629, in 1645, you'll find the Windward parishes, St. Philip, St. John, and so on. And St. George was set up in 45, I beg your pardon. If you look at Ligon from 1647 to 49, when he was here, he's talking about 10,000 acres of land which belonged to the merchants of London. So we're going to be dealing a lot with trade, merchants. If you look at the parishes, parish sizes, you'll find that St. George is 10,000 acres, 10,795 acres. So the plantations in here are belonging to the merchants, but in truth and in fact, nearly everybody was a merchant, and it turns out also a Quaker. Hold on. So if you look at, this is a prospect of Bridgetown from 1695 by Samuel Coppins. You can see the amount of ships that are there. Bridgetown as an appearance. Right. So let me turn off this thing here and zoom in. You can see the forts here. That's Willoughby Fort over here. I can't see it because I have. Oh, let me see. Okay, over here is Needham's. There's a gun platform here. James Fort here. Idea is intersecting fire from these forts will drive off anybody coming, and they're protecting the ships. They're not protecting the land because the wealth is in the ships, not actually in the land. So if you zoom in a little bit, let me see if I can get this to work now. This is obviously the cathedral. All right, so if you zoom in, you can see you can actually see that. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit better. Control F. You can see the ships being careened, and you can see that the merchants are really living in opulence. The windmills are wooden. Houses are not so dramatic. Lots of windmills, but the merchants dominate the scene. There's a cathedral and so on. So let's go back. Okay, let's go forward now. The point I'm making here is that it's all about trade. It's all about trade. And I've just done the wrong thing. So let me see what is happening. Slide. No, I want. Close master view. Okay. So close master view. Sorry about this. I am a novice at this thing. So home, draw, view, reading view. Okay. So I gotta go forward again. Sorry about that.
Switch that as an appearance.
Okay, so if you look at 1695, this is the colorized version of that map or that drawing. Here is what's happening up on the windward side, up at Concept Bay, Codrington College. This is taken from Mayo in 1722. You'll see that for those who hike know that track down to Concept Bay well. The ships are offshore. So this is also a landing point. It's trying to transport goods across the island on pretty bad roads or paths. It's pretty difficult. So you're going to find that the East Coast is used also in shipping. And this is a Schomburg image, 1848. You can obviously see heavy numbers of ships in Carlisle Bay. There's the cathedral, St. Mary's Church. This is a government house, because this is taken, or not taken, this is drawn from a vantage point of Grand View, which is just to the east of where the reservoir is above Springer Memorial School. Cows, you see the cows. Bear those cows in mind, okay? Because I'll show you why. Because the stock traders are really important in the early days. And I'm trying to look at the early days of Barbados, real early. So if you go through the census list, this is what you'll find for St. Lucie. Abbott is a small landholder. He has 7 Negroes. Archer, there's only one Archer here, Edward Archer. He owns 2 acres. He's the forerunner of Archer's Bay. I mark this because of Champion Ground. You'll see that Champagne Ground is also on a map, on the Ford map. So if I were to start this, turn off the volume.
1580 census.
Turn off the volume, and just move forward. You can see that a lot of the in St. Lucie, a lot of the landowners are small landowners. The slaves, they own not a lot. English, he's at Chance Hall, 140. He has 51. If you go down some more, you'll find that Lambert has 300 acres, 150 slaves. Maddox has 127 acres, but most of these are small landholders. So it is unlikely that they are growing sugar. It is more likely that they're actually keeping animals and also doing subsistence farming. So you see that they're not a lot of large landowners in St. Lucie. Population is quite high, 437, 6,800 acres, just under 2,000 slaves, 118 white servants. It then gives you the people who are baptized. The thing is that many of these people are Quakers, and many Quakers did not go in for baptism. So as you go down here, you'll see this is what should be in the parochial register, but it's missing. But there's a lot more that should be in there as well. Those who were not baptized, but it should probably be in a birth register. So here you have the burials, 1679. There's no parochial register with these. The only way you'll find these is in the census list, and that's only like for a year and a bit. So you don't, if you were doing genealogy in St. Lucie, you would be stuck because there are no registers. Total burials 72. The total baptisms was 94. So you could say out of 474 families, 94 children were baptized, and 72 people in all died. So St. Lucie is ahead, you could say. Okay, let's go forward. This is, let me see where this is. But this is St. Lucie. Sometimes this doesn't always work. St. Joseph. St. Joseph is an interesting one too. In St. Joseph, you have larger plantations, larger plantations, and larger numbers of slaves. The servants and freemen are separated. These are bond servants. These are people who are probably paid. So these are the large plantations in yellow. But even so, I'll show you something else. Oops, sorry about that. Oh dear. Ay, 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 ay. So St. Joseph. So if you come forward here, there are only 72 inhabitants in St. Joseph. There are only 72 inhabitants in St. Joseph. This keeps giving me trouble. Sorry about that. There are only 72 inhabitants who own land in St. Joseph. The population of slaves is double what it is in St. Lucie, and of white servants, 118 in St. Lucie and 2,000 in beg your pardon. This is the white servants. These are the slaves. 68 acres. Ah, dear. See, land is there. They switched it around on me, so I missed that. So if you come down to this last comment, I think this tells you a lot. What are buried elsewhere by the Quakers and other persons I know not. So there's no way that they can get into the parochial register because other arrangements have been made for their burial. So they're not in the parochial register. So what I'm going to think about, remember what those cows, what did they do for a living? Are there any clues left in the land or in their wills? So there are two fundamental questions I want to try and answer. First of all, it seems silly. Can cows swim in the sea, and can they dive? So let's go forward and look at this video.
This is the traditional Irish method of transporting cattle to an island.
Wherever you go.
They're swimming to where they'll graze for the summer. Cows are naturally strong swimmers. Now that they have made it on land, it's time to dry off and start eating. This is the
So can they dive? Watch this. The leader goes and the followers follow. So by the time the next group are ready, both of them know what to do. Almost like synchronized diving. So if a ship were to come to Barbados, this is a way that they could be unloaded, with the livestock could be unloaded. They're going to go and they're going to end up in this instance in enclosures. There's no wire or anything, so there's a problem. So you start going forward. I'm saying Cove Bay, they unload here, come up the track here that the hikers would use normally. And here's these dry stone walls around Pico Tenerife. Looking at it a little closer, this is what they look like. Here's Pico. If you climb up Pico and look over, you'll see usually goats disappearing, wild or I don't know if they're wild or not. And that's a pretty steep incline, but they just randomly with no problem. So if I'm going to be looking at this family here, Maverick. So if you think of Maverick, you think of Texas, you think of cattle, you think of stock. So what I'm going to say is that Maverick is a early settler in Barbados, and he is involved, or at least that family is involved in stock trading with where? Now let's go and see with where. This is the mail map from 1722. Here's Goat House Bay, Jordan Scopen. Here are the ships. Lambert, Maverick. You can see. If you continue on to 1750, you'll see Abbott's Bay. If you go back here a minute, you'll see that Abbott is a family over here. I've not marked him, but he's a Quaker family, or that is a Quaker family. Here's Abbott's Bay. So he only has daughters, and they marry Hussey. So the Abbott surname is gone. So here's the Quaker meeting. It's known as Pumpkin Hill Quaker meeting. Here's Lambert's plantation. Here's Cove Bay or Gaves Cove. And I'm going to give you another possible name for it as well. So let's go forward a little bit more. 1750 I showed you. So if you come into 1951, the names have stayed the same, Jordan Scopen, but you also have an enclosure shown on the map. That is a stone pen. This is interesting because here's Abbott's Bay still there. And then there's the site of the Arawak settlement there. So let's go on some more. This is what it looks like in 1951. You can definitely see the outline of the stone pen. I think that's probably Jordan Scopen. So let's look at the Maverick family. Mrs. Gale, I used to talk with a lot about genealogy. She was a Barrow, and she told me that she traced her family, Barrows, back to Mavericks. And she was in touch with some of them, and they invited her to a Maverick family reunion in Texas, and she went. So it's obviously Maverick is coming from America, not England at the time they're trading with Barbados. So let's go forward a little bit more. This is the Reverend John Maverick. He was a Puritan. He arrived in New England in 1630. after the Mayflower. So he would have come probably with Winthrop and been part of Massachusetts Bay Colony when that was first founded. His oldest son, Samuel, had been in New England 9 years, since 1624. So if you want, you can use this site to go and look at the genealogical research that Samuel Maverick did on his ancestors leading to this man. So he's the father. He is the father of all. Now look at this. Massachusetts then starts to blossom. In America, lots of Puritans in England are being persecuted. So they're leaving after 1625 because the King of England, his wife is a Roman Catholic, and they're trying to make the Church of England Roman Catholic again. So a lot of them are leaving. So they said newcomers were arriving by every ship. These are Puritans that are leaving England and coming to New England. Where are they coming through? It turns out that because of the Atlantic Gyre and the trade winds, the northeast trade from the northeast, turns out that the Leeward Islands are stopover points. So St. Kitts was first settled in 1624. There were problems there with French, Caribs, and hurricanes. Barbados then settled in 1627. So look at this now. Samuel Maverick went to Virginia. Virginia is settled in 1607, and he brings back some heifers and goats. So I think this is actually saying Samuel Maverick is into stock trading. There's a book I took this from. Here it is. You can look it up if you want. Here's a bit about the Puritan migration, 1620 to 1640. Now, first Plymouth colony with the Mayflower, and then the Massachusetts Bay colony with Winthrop. But they need for these people to come through somewhere that the ships can be restocked with food and with water before they do the last leg of the voyage to New England. Barbados is the place. So if you look at the population in America between 1610 and 1830, you'll see these would be mostly of European. I think here on they start to measure the indigenous people. 350 in 1610, that would be Virginia alone. 2000 in 1620, that's Virginia has grown, and also Plymouth Rock has been settled. 1630, it goes to 4,000, but here's where the Great Puritan migration starts. Between 1630 and 1640, you see the population dramatically increase. In 10 years' time, a decade, it's doubled, 50,000. By 1670, 2 decades later, it's doubled again. And 150, so let me see, doubled again. 200 in 1690, 2 decades, doubled again. Think about this market, it's exploding. So if you're a merchant or a manufacturer in England or Europe, and you've got a market that's absolutely exploding like this, you're going to make money. You have a huge insatiable demand to supply. So if you looked at the population in America in 1680, this is 151,507 versus Barbados. I think the 1680 census has the number of slaves at 37,000. I'm saying 13,000 or so European inhabitants. So you're looking at 50. This is about 3 to 1. But by the time 1820 rolls around, it's more like 10 to 1. So the market, it's all of this is all of the growth, the huge growth that was experienced in that time, 1680 to 1820, is all about markets and supplying markets. Profits are developed through markets. Massachusetts and Rhode Island are gainsaying both. Start to grow rich. So horses and cows come to Barbados and the West Indian Islands. Virginia and Maryland get in on the act too. Newfoundland also. And all sorts of products are shipped to Barbados. Biscuits, flour, FLOUR, peas, beef, pork, butter, all sorts of things. Plus the livestock, horses, cows, sheep, and goats. You're probably not going to ship stallions and bulls at the same time. Most of these will be female. So it means that the population in Barbados of these animals is not self-sustaining. And obviously the people who deliver the goods don't want it to be self-sustaining, so they're not going to bring the males down. So if you wanted a map to show you what the trade was like, import was like, this PhD thesis is worthwhile looking at from University of Edinburgh, McGuinness. So this is really what imports look like in 1684. It's 1684, right? Lots from the eastern seaboard of North America. Even into the 1700s, around the time of the American Revolution, Benedict Arnold, who we all know was put to death for treason, he was a horse trader and a cattle trader. He used to buy his horses in Canada in the dead of winter, bring them down to New Haven, and then fatten them up and ship them to Barbados. He was also his own skipper. So you'll find that a lot of the wills will talk about the testator's ship or family ship. There's always a ship involved because trade is absolutely fundamental to early Barbados. This is a bit about the horse and cattle trade. The ships were known as horse jockeys. They sailed only in summer, wasn't long. Horses were very valuable, and horse stealing was punishable ultimately by death, hanging. Connecticut, same sort of thing was happening. Horse stealing was a problem, and because there was a lot of money in horses and cattle. So I'm saying that here come the horses and cattle, livestock, dealt with by Maverick. Now watch this. He's going to send that stock into this road network in 1680, and he's going to supply all these plantations and so on around there. But what about St. John and St. Joseph? Well, what he'll do is he'll send them up here, up the East Coast. Around here is, for those who hike and know the land, is Long Pond and Green Pond, our Long Pond and Green Pond. So they've come from a cold climate. So Barbados is hot. They're gonna go in the water and come out stink, looking gray. And then they're gonna come up here in need of a wash. So maybe that's why up here is called Cattle Wash. Then they're gonna turn to go up into St. Joseph and St. John. And maybe that's why up here is called Horse Hill. Who knows? But that's just the thought. So here's what a satellite image looks like for Cove Bay. Here you can see the dry stone walls. You can see them better on the, oh, incidentally, I was told that by a hiker that this was the place for a fishing fleet in the days of sail, up to the 1940s. So this was actually used as a harbor, believe it or not. So maybe the next time there's a hurricane down south, like Beryl, if the fishing boats need to come as far north as possible. Probably not a good idea if it's heading north. This is what it looked like in 1951. You can definitely see the outline of the dry stone walls here. Can't say that maybe it's rough here, but certainly on the satellite image, the one before, it looked as though you could get into this bay pretty easily and let the livestock out. So if you want to look more closely at the Mayo map, at the Ford map, I'm not going to play this video. What I want to do is to go forward and show you the results. If you put on the roads, this is what the roads look like in 1680. If you notice, there are no coast roads. These are port towns: Oistins, Bridgetown, Old Town, Spikestown. The island is basically surviving on trade. By, let's see, 1640s, 50s, the Quakers have arrived, and they're evangelizing the Puritans, and a lot of Puritans become Quakers as well. So these are the 5 major Quaker meeting rooms. Bridge up here at Cliffs, well, Thickets. This is the spring meeting. This is the Heathcock's Bay. Sometimes it's called the Plantation meeting. And this is Pumpkin Hill in St. Lucie. None of these are shown on this map because I think none of them were built. This is 1680. So I think these are built, let me see, the map is probably done in 1675. After 1675, they were built. And they're not anything substantial. They were not anything substantial. The Quakers were people who believe in a spiritual church. All these stars here are the fields that are called Room Field or Chapel Field. And so you see that the Quakers actually had a network. You also find that in St. Philip, Ralph Weeks left his house to be used by friends for meetings, for the meetings. So let's go on a little bit more. When you put the parishes on, this is what it looks like. The other thing, those little black dots I'm showing you here, these are fields called garden fields, all distributed all around the island. So these are Quaker burying grounds. So you'll find everybody who didn't go in the Church of England, you'll find them buried in there. So that's my theory. And there you go. Now, if you looked at the road system, you would see there's no connection between the north of the island and the south of the island. But there is. This is what's called the Old Indian Trail, the hikers. I added on this little piece because along here is where the Amerindians live. So let's get a little quicker. I'm out of time. Some will extract from Joanne Mcree Sanders. She has 3 volumes. The Maverick family has 1 will in this volume 1 and 4 wills in this. So you can actually go through these extracts and figure out who is related to who has children. And this Parker family is another family we'll see that arises here. So here's John Maverick, the elder. He has Samuel Maverick. He's a trader in America, New England. His son comes, but not before Elias Maverick and James Parker. That level here is in Barbados, and I suspect they are dealing with the New England family. These are the children of James Parker and Mary Maverick. Here's Nathaniel Maverick. He's the guy from down in St. Lucie. He is buried in St. Lucie's church somewhere. No tombstone. So if you looked at Samuel Maverick, this is a guy who was trading in America first, you'll see that it stretches over a period of time. So you can actually use the wills from Joanne Mcree Sanders to make up put together a genealogical, a tree, a family tree. And this is over 100 years. They haven't looked at a single parochial record here. So what happened to the Maverick name? Where did it go?
I'm going to search.
In Barbados, you can see Elias Maverick. He is 1696, but his he appears in St. Michael Register, which is from early. This marriage is St. Michael Register. Okay, so let's go down a little bit further. And you see a Jack Maverick. He is an interesting guy, very interesting guy, because let me show you who he is. Let me see. When you go and look at his burial, you'll see that he's buried in 1850 in St. Lucy. So he appears in the parochial register, and you'll see that he's from Pickering's plantation. He is actually a laborer. He works at Pickering's. So the Church of England, he's actually chosen Maverick as his surname. Pickering's is where he's working. When he's buried, I think this is really interesting. The rector in attendance at the appointed hour. Rector was in attendance at the appointed hour, but no ceremony. The corpse having been brought to church long after sunset, near 8 o'clock. So too late to be buried. Then you have another one, the same sort of thing happening. The corpse is brought late to church, and it's not buried. There's no ceremony. It doesn't mean it's not buried, because think about it. If the family brings the body to church, what are they going to do? Are they going to carry it back home and let it sleep in the house with them? Unlikely. I think they will bury the body. And I suspect that the people who dug the graves would have been are responsible for digging the graves, would have been the family. They would have dug the grave. So they just put the body in and buried it. So let's go a little further. So this guy is really interesting. Watch this. He's 80. No, what I'm saying is, if he's a laborer and he's born in 1770, then he was a slave. So if you go to Pickering's plantation here and look at the slave return for Pickering, let's see if we can get this thing to increase a little bit. All right. So he's at Pickering plantation. This is the slave return for Pickering's plantation. You've got William Oxley. He is the attorney for Ward Cadogan, and he's making the return. Look at Jack Maverick, cattle keeper, and he's 40. This is probably 1817. So the years don't quite match, but I think the name, having those two names together, tells you that this Jack Maverick and the Jack Maverick who was buried when he was 80, or whatever his age was, in St. Lucy, are the same people. So then you find in 1750, because 1747 is the cutoff, is the start. So you've got a couple of Mavericks here that died and are buried. This is another Maverick here, William Benjamin Maverick. He's a laborer. He's at Coconut Hall. And if you can see over here, which I can't, you'll see his father is the superintendent at Pickering's plantation. So Maverick seems to be associated also with Pickering's plantation. So where have many of the Bajan defendants of John Maverick, Puritan teacher, gone? Probably went to Texas, or intermarried with other families here and taken another surname. I don't know if I want to do too much here, because looking at these two plantations, the land deeds also give you information about marriages. So for example, Pickerins, you have a marriage settlement. So you know John Pickering married Abigail Frere. When you look up Abigail, that marriage took place in Christchurch. So it is actually a matter of record. Now this guy, William Pickering, he has to be buried in my plantation under the harbor. That name is interesting because there are two fields at Lambert's called Coal Harbor. He also frees one of his slaves. I think that is a characteristic of a Quaker. And this is back in 1667. Not unusual, but not many. If it is, this is where he's probably buried. This is the garden field at Pickering's plantation. I suspect there were two plantations, one owned by one family, one by another, were joined together. This is the garden field, and this is where he ends up being buried. So you'll find, I would imagine, slaves, Irish, anybody who is not going into the Church of England burying ground, they'll go into there. So if you look at the aerial photo from 51, here's Garden Field, here's Chapel Field, here's Pumpkin Hill, and here are the names of fields here called Pumpkin Hill. I wouldn't swear this is where the actual meeting was. Maybe it's around here in this area, but you know, that's interesting. When you start looking now at Lambert fields, you have North Coal Harbor, South Coal Harbor, Upper Coal Harbor. C-O-L-L-A-L is in the handwritten maps I have. I think it's really C-O-L-E. And I think this is Coal Harbor. I think this was a harbor, and that's where most of the livestock came into Barbados. They're all those names back there are in the vicinity of a place called Alexandria in Barbados. I think it is, let me see, it's here. This is Alexandria. Alexandria is a port in Virginia. I think it was founded in 1695 as the trade expanded. So here's the Potomac. Here's Alexandria. It's in Virginia, and that's the link between Barbados and New England and Virginia that you can find from looking at families and doing research. Thank you for your attention. I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much, John, for an interesting presentation.
Long, sorry.
Okay, while persons are getting their questions together, what struck me would have been in your presentation was the links you established between Barbados and the US, both family links and commercial links. The importance of that livestock farming. And one of the documents you use would have been the field plans. So while persons are getting their thoughts together, can you tell persons exactly what are these field plans, these field names, and what were they used for? And perhaps have given a better sense of how they can use them for genealogy.
If you look at surveys, old surveys of most plantations, you'll find that the actual fields, some things are just given letters, but very often they actually have field names. I did an article on Duke's plantation on Bajan things, and I put up a survey from 1834, which had on the actual field names. In the 70s, Colin Hudson and some students went around from plantation to plantation asking the managers to give them the names of the field and let them put it on a map. And they had the 1951 aerial photos. So they would take the aerial photo, trace the fields on a particular plantation, and ask the manager or the owner to please fill in these names and how big the fields actually are. So yes, there's a possibility of transcription errors, but I've found I did it for Jukes, and I found it was pretty good. It matched back pretty well with the actual sworn survey from 1934 in this. So the field names are important, so that around the plantation yard you would get fields like Stillhouse, Copper Hole, Stable, Mansion House. Garden field is usually around the actual yard, and that's where people are buried. So if you find wills that where a Quaker will say, "I want to be buried in my garden beside my wife," that's Hopewell and St. Thomas, Gubbins. You'll find Negro yards. Not all plantations have Negro yards, and then there are two reasons, I think. I think that not all of them did, first of all, but also in the 60s and 70s, a lot of the owners and managers changed the names of the fields from Negro yard to whatever they chose. Like, I know my uncle changed the name to Kent Field. I've seen a labor yard at Lion Castle. I've seen at Jukes, Negro yard changed to Tank Field. That's more an attempt to avoid offending sensibilities. Some of those plantations, actually, those maps, some of the maps use the N word rather than Negro. So obviously that's a touchy subject, but I think it's important to know where the Negro yards were, because if you wanted to do archaeological research, if you change the name, unless you go back and find the old map, you can't really establish too much. The garden fields, for example, no reason to change the name of the garden fields, but the garden fields, you will find, I think, burials in there, given what I've seen in wills.
Right, thank you, John. We have some questions coming through. We have Nancy. So when did the Barbados map change angle? What is the correct one? The one now or that previous one on slide 41?
Well, let me show you what happened. I think 1750, you have north pointing north. In 1680, you have north pointing east. In 1722, you have north pointing west. In 1750, you have north pointing north, and then it stayed like that from then on.
Yeah. What I can tell Nancy as well is if she's interested in learning more about the old maps of Barbados, there are several articles in the Journal of the Barbados Museum and Historical Society, and there's also a fairly in-depth article on Bajan things written by Jim Webster on the maps. So she can have a look use either source to find out more about the maps of Barbados. Okay, we have another one from Dorian Straker Corbin. She said, from what my mom, who is 101 years old and grew up in Boscobel, St. Peter, told me, Cove Bay was a fishing cove with boats. Her mom bought fish from the local fishermen there. So
confirms what the guy who told me that grew up in St. Lucie too. So we were on a hike in that area, and he told me that he could remember that, and he could remember them. I don't know if you know the casuarina trees on the lip.
yes.
We used to pull them up there and maintain them up there. the boat would come in, throw its ballast, because they're all sailboats at that time, throw its ballast overboard, put a buoy on it, or put something, that flotation device on it, and then come to shore, be dragged up the hill, and maintain. Then they'll go back out, pick up their ballast, and go back sailing to sea and fishing.
Yeah, thank you. So you have Sally Ann Riley, who thanks you for a fascinating talk. And she goes on, I wonder if our love pivot of to horse racing is a carryover from the livestock trade all of those years ago.
I think it probably is, because if you look at some of the old, I grew up in a family that before there were cars, there were horses, and that's how people got around. So I remember pictures of my mother and a group of other women in their 20s and 30s. They're basically looking to teach people about riding. Now, if you think about that nowadays, that's almost impossible to imagine. So in the 60s, that's what went on. So everybody who got around, either they had a donkey cart, a horse, something like that to get around. And of course, men will be men, and and each one is going to say their horse is faster than the other. So yeah, I agree. Horse racing could come from that.
Okay, thank you. So we have Julia Scott, who's thanking you for an interesting presentation. And she's also asking if you have any information on the old Harris plantation in St. Lucie. She's saying it may have been referred to as Checker Hall. I'm not sure she's right. Harris's.
Harris is a surname from, definitely. And there are field names I came across in St. Lucie with the name Harris. So Harris for sure is in there. And actually, if you look at the genealogy for that Maverick family, you'll see that I think it's one of his sons, Elias Maverick, the son of, I think, John Maverick. He married Annie Harris. So the Harris family name has been around in Barbados from year dot. Checker Hall, people have asked about Checker Hall. There's information in Kerry that you can find about Checker Hall, but probably not up to date. It's probably up to the 70s or so. But I didn't know Harris owned Checker Hall, but I will check Kerry and see. But as I say, I found fields with the Harris name in it, but I don't have the field names for Checker Hall. I have field names, I think, for Broomfield. There are a lot of field names I don't have, and the museum also doesn't have, because the museum has more. That's what I have. I got mine from Colin Hudson. I think you got yours from Richard Goddard, who got his from Colin Hudson.
Yes.
So that surveyors and lawyers would probably have those maps, and they need to really be asked more. You know, they can answer a lot of those questions.
All right, we have Sally Ann Riley, who's asking a follow-up. This is a general question. She said you use the term slave return. Can you explain?
Okay, after 1807 was the abolition of the slave trade. What the English government, the British government, realized is that it was still going on. The Royal Navy stopped it. Or in fact, America also abolished the slave trade in 1808. And the slaves were really going to America, to the southern colonies. So to make sure that the British overseas colonial dependencies, you can actually find them all online, to make sure that they were not purchasing slaves. Everybody who was a slave owner after 1817, every 3 years, had to give an account of every slave they owned, and every slave that either died in their custody or was born in their custody. So you had, by the time 1834 rolls around, you have a really, every 3 years from 1817, you have those returns coming in for every plantation, every slave, every single slave owner in Barbados you'll find. So you can go online and find that, and you can search it. It's indexed. You can put in a name for a slave or a surname, or you can look at the owner and you can put in a name and surname, and you can find all the information you want on every slave, or at least all the information that is available on every slave that lived in Barbados or died in Barbados between 1817 and 1834.
Sally Ann, these are also known as slave registers. So you will find them on ancestry.com. They used to be free on ancestry.co.uk, but I haven't checked if they're still free on that resource. But slave registers of the British colonies. Well, we have an anonymous attendee who's asking if you have any reference to the name Dean in St. Lucie, and if so, what year and what location? Dean.
Norton Dean was the, I think, manager at, I think, in the early 1900s. Dean goes back far in Barbados history. So you'll find them mostly in the north. The deans in the south are mixed deans. So I come from dean in the south. So I come from a mixed dean. So the ones in the north were what you would call white deans, for lack of a better thing. So I think I found deans from the 1600s and mostly in the north. I've not done a lot of work on that family, but definitely they were around for a long time.
Thank you. We have a follow-up from Dorian Straker Corbin. He said, I saw the name Robert Belgrave in St. Lucie. Do you have any information on him? My maternal family is Belgrave from Bosco Bell.
Well, there's one place that Belgrave appears in on the maps. The Belgrave family appears on maps in, I think, 1680 and 1722, the early times. And that is just to the east of Mount Gay. So Belgrave is definitely from the north. No other place you'll find a Belgrave on the map. And the wills have looked at are all from the north, up in the north.
Okay.
So for sure Belgrave comes from up there, definitely. No two ways about it.
She also asked Chandler, have you came across the name Chandler in St. Lucie?
Yeah, plenty Chandlers in there. So you have Chandler Bay. There's a Chandler Bay on the coast. There are Chandlers up there. I came across a Sir William Kelman Chandler. He was what was it? I think Master of Chancery. So he dealt with when the plantations had to be sold. That Chandler family that I just mentioned, they ended up owning Portland, Allendale, Six Men's. I can't remember Mount Pleasant as well. I can't remember, but they owned a lot of plantations in St. Peter and St. Lucie in the 1800s, from the 1900s, I would say. They also are related to the Chandlers who owned Todd's and Lemon Arbor. So you'll find plenty Chandlers in that area. So just as, for example, I showed you an example of where slave took the surname Maverick. You'll find that if you want, that's a different. If you wanted to really go and research back into slavery, you're going to meet a brick wall, because most of the slaves, there were some that actually did get baptized and become members of the Church of England. you're not going to find a record for baptisms or burials. You may be lucky. You may be lucky, right? But definitely that's a difficult, that's the same sort of problem here. You meet brick walls in the parochial registers for various reasons. They disappeared, they got damaged. But in the case of slaves, they actually I found even some baptisms and not marriages, I think baptisms, where you only get a Christian name, you don't get a surname. So not everybody had surnames early out in a short period after slavery. But if you lived up in that area, yes, Chandler would have been a surname that would have been available for choosing. I think the most popular names are A, B, and C. Aline, Braffett, and Clark in Barbados.
Thanks. Okay, we have a question from David Gleave. As a beginner researching Bajan ancestry, what would be the best way to proceed beyond the obvious? Ancestry, find my past, etc. What are the best sources to look into?
If you're looking at your family, go and talk with your parents, grandparents, if they're still alive, and get them to tell you who their parents were. Then go straight to familysearch.org. That's free. It's a Mormon site. And fill in the names and start looking backwards. Sometimes you will meet a brick wall. The other thing you can do is you can actually start at the beginning. If start and see what the earliest records are for your family name, and see if you can come forward and link that family tree into the family tree going backwards. But sometimes you can't get the two of them to meet. No way. No records.
All right. Thanks, John. So, David, the free site familysearch.org has Barbados church and parochial records from 1637 to 1930. And that is a very good place to begin. There's also another site that deals primarily with burials, monumental inscriptions, and so on, CaribbeanFamilyHistory.org. These are the two main sites for searching your Barbadian ancestry. And they're both free. If you need any assistance in searching, you should check the museum's YouTube channel. We did a couple presentations some time ago on using online sources for family research, 1 and 2. 2 deals primarily with family search. I mean, there have been a few changes since then, but fundamentally it remains the same. And 1 deals with the Caribbean family history and some other sites that you can use to assist you. Okay, Linda is asking, where can the maps with field names be found? But I can tell Linda that we have some here at the museum. But you can continue, John.
Yeah, go to the museum. And go to you, right?
Yes, there are also a few articles in our journal about field names. So make contact with me. As John said earlier, we don't have all of them, but we do have some. The ones we have usually have two per plantation, a listing of the field names and a map showing the actual location of the fields with their names. Okay, we have Sally Ann Riley. Were the stone walls used to define ownership to corral the animals or both?
I think that was part of a property. I would guess they were used to corral the animals. I don't think they were used to define properties. I've tried to match the land tax enclosures that are in existence now to like for example, Abbott owned 40 acres. So if I looked at where Abbott was, could I find a 40-acre enclosure to fit in? Turns out I can, because you don't expect the boundaries to change except the land is actually subdivided. When they put this, if you look at this looks like confusion, but that's what 3,500 fields in Barbados look like. There are still holes that I have. I think I have I have some more fields to put into, but once you do that type of mapping, you're able to make informed guesses, because that's all you can do about why they're named what they're named. What you'll find is every plantation works almost the same way. So that shows that there's a common thread that goes through all of them. And I think that has the Quaker thread, the management and so on. So you can make, sensible conclusions from what is there.
Yeah. Thanks, John. We have another one from Linda. A comment, some information actually. My father is a Corbin, descended from the Corbins in Boscobel, who live in the Risk. My father was told as a child that a first Corbin swam ashore near Cove Bay.
I heard that, and that's why it's called Corbin's Bay. I heard that story already too. From a Corbin. From a Corbin.
Okay, there's one from Sue. She's asking if you know of the Stevenson family in St. Lucie.
Yeah, the Stevenson family. I haven't looked at that family, but I could tell you where Stevenson's was. Let me show you. Let me see if I can show you. Let me turn this off for a minute. Let me turn these off. Baradier. I'll show you where that is. So let me put on this. All right, let me go back to 0 so that people know what I'm talking about. And let me go up here and say Lucy. Here's Stevenson, past Cloughs. In fact, if you go up there and ask people, I think there's an old guy up there. I almost got to talk with a elderly fella. He died about a couple of weeks after I went back up there. No, a couple of weeks before he went back, and so I didn't. But I've been told there's an older fella up in this area. I can't remember the name. So if you want to find out more about Stevenson's, go up in this area here in St. Lucie and ask. Look for an older person and have a talk with him.
So what's the name of that area?
This is Stevenson up here. But if you were to look at,
we're not seeing it on the screen.
Sorry, I'm not sharing. You are.
Oh, so tell us the name of the area.
Okay, up by Cloughs, just past Cloughs. Yeah, it's Stevenson. So how come this is not? What am I doing wrong then?
Oh, you have to. We're still seeing Virginia. Okay, but while you are, because time is getting away, so let's. There's somebody from Topping. She's asking you, thanking you for interesting and informative presentation, and asked if you found any information on the Graves family from Crab Hill.
Not from Crab Hill. The first Graves owned Hope Plantation. They were Quakers. Graves is a St. Lucie. You'll find Graves all through St. Lucie. I know a lot of Graves. I work with a lot of Graves as well. So Graves is really a St. Lucie name. Boyce is another one. So for sure, Graves is a St. Lucy name. I have, yeah, Graves is more, I wouldn't have said it was crap. I would have thought it was more like to the east of that. But you know, it depends on where it was developed and where people could live.
Okay. We have another one from Sally Ann Riley. She said this is her final question. There is a U. Riley on one of the earliest slides from St. Joseph. My paternal family surname is Riley. I'm from Boscobel. Have you seen any reference to that name in your research of the northern families?
There's a Riley family, I think, Riley field name, I think at Castle Grant in St. Joseph. I can't remember the Riley name down north. Doesn't mean it isn't there. I would have to go and look and see. But definitely I remember because I was wondering how come, and you can see Riley on early maps as well in that St. Joseph area from what I remember. But Riley is obviously an early name too.
Okay. Right. Here's one from Joyce. I've heard that graves are from St. Lucy. Also heard that there are graves in St. John. Can you explain why these families are found in these different and distant parishes?
I would have to look at the graves in St. John. Probably there are, but let me give you an example. The Phillips family. Phillips family, I would think is a Christchurch name, but it's also a St. Lucy name. Remember the idea, the four port towns, and the fact that most people were involved with trade. I think that the north of the island dealt mostly with the eastern seaboard of North America, and the south dealt with England. I think that obviously they dealt with both, but predominantly you'll find a place up in up north called Alexandria in St. Lucy. So my suspicion is that Alexandria that gets the name because there's a port in Virginia called Alexandria that was founded in 1695, and there was a lot of trade between the two. So you get families who are working together in a network of trade, and you have ports at you have ports at different points along the coast. So you'll find that some of those families appear like close to those ports. So I don't know if that explains it. Maybe it goes back to those early days. Maybe it's just that the family moved. That's all. No big deal. I will look at graves in St. John though. I haven't looked at graves in St. John from what I can remember. I will see what I can find.
Sometimes there are different branches of a family. Some may be owning land in the north, some in the south, the east, and so on. So there were persons who own land in different parts of the island. So it's not something that was not seen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
We have some information here from Jim Webster. He said, I believe that Bajan artist Larry Belgrave comes from St. Lucy, from the St. Lucy area. He also mentioned that Hopeland Plantation was sold to the Chandlers of Allendale in 1949. Okay, so we are going to take the last few of these questions. We have one from Sheila Clark Wilkinson. She would like to congratulate you, John, on your presentation. She says she's Sheila Clark Wilkinson and live in Panama. She said, I plan on being in Barbados on February 5th, 2025. I was born in Panama. So were my parents. I had 3 grandparents from Barbados. Next month, we gathering goes to St. Peter. 2 of my grandparents were born and baptized in Black Bess. So that's another northern, yes.
Yeah. Or they were shown as as working in Black Bess at
Were
Black Bess.
baptized, so perhaps the board was given as Black Bess when they
Black
were
Bess.
baptized.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, we have Julia Scott asking me a question. Is there still a plan to oh, okay. Well, yes, of course, there is a plan to work on the journal, ongoing plan, which will be revealed in the fullness of time. Jim asks again, I always wondered about the stone wall. So your presentation really helps to clarify what they could have been used for. So thank you.
Yeah, those stone walls, I only figured them, or I only came up with that idea very recently. They always puzzled me, but that seemed to be the most sensible explanation that I could come up with.
Yeah.
I heard Richard Gordon had his own story, but I don't think it was right.
Okay. Well, we can invite persons to join the hikes and have a look at those stone walls that
Right.
just above Cove Bay, close to Pico Tenerife.
Right.
We have some here for Angela Skeet. My father's family adopted the name Skeet soon after slavery. No idea of why. I traced the earliest person to 1840s when he was baptized as an adult with the name Scipio Skeet. He was still on Spring Hall and a laborer. I think I traced him to the slave registers to Spring Hall Plantation. Have you seen the name Skeet in St. Lucie? That
Yeah,
might
Lowland was
influence
Skeet.
his
Sorry,
choice of a surname.
Lowland, I think Skeet family owned Lowland. I've seen Skeet in St. Lucie. In fact, I looked at a Skeet family coming out of slavery from also Spring Hall. It might be the same one. One of those Skeets actually ended up in Liberia. So I was looking at the list of people who came from who went to Liberia. One was a Skeet, so I decided, well, let me see if the techniques I have will help me to understand where he came from. And I actually tracked him down to, I can't remember his first name. Don't think it was Scipio, but obviously there's a Skeet family in Spring Hall Plantation, obviously. He started based for nothing. He ended up as a shopkeeper in Bridgetown. And then he joined with the others who were going to Liberia, went there. So I found he was an interesting guy to look at.
Yeah. Well, Angela, if you haven't looked at that Liberia link, you may want to. At the museum, we do have a list of the persons who went on the Cora, so you can make contact with me. Marcia is thanking you, John, for a variety of information. Since you have shared information related to the numerous burial sites not related to the established churches across Barbados, do you consider that all those lands with burials, undeveloped in houses, etc., should be identified and protected in the interest of heritage tourism?
Yeah, I think they should be. You can't very well be going to England and asking for reparations for people whose graves you're not respecting. So that's nonsense. But I think they should be not necessarily protected not necessarily for heritage tourism, but for our heritage, because it's the right thing to do. I'll tell you where one of them was, just to give you an idea. One of them used to be under Sheraton Mall. Another one used to be under the villages at Coverley. Right? So we really aren't, we talk, but we really don't walk the walk, right? So we really treat those sites with scant respect. People are dead and gone, so, unfortunately. Nobody thinks about them.
So John, a question. I know that the cemetery at Roview in St. Peter was part of that was originally a Quaker burial ground, which they gave to the Anglican Church. Are there other instances of that type of integration of the Quaker burial ground into, say, the Anglican or other established church burial grounds? Or that was a one-off thing?
I think that's in 1846, and obviously it was under the I think a Hill family was responsible for it. They were obviously Quakers. So I think the last Quaker burial was I think of Benjamin Collins in 1826 in that burying ground. It then became part of the St. Peter's Church in diocese, and I think I can't remember if it was paid for or if it was a gift, probably a gift. So I don't know of any others like that. In Christchurch down in Maxwell Coach Roads, there's a if you look on the thing, it's Mayo, it's called the Old Churchyard,
Yes.
right? That was supposed to be where the Anglican Church was located, or the Church of England was located before it went to top of the hill. It was destroyed there supposedly in 1666. But when you look, I think there's a burial in there I saw Francis Ford in, I think, 1772. So I know the Ford family are Quakers. So that is a puzzling one there. I don't know if it is really Anglican, Church of England cemetery, or if it has a relation to Quakers. Because all the names on the thing, like Adams and so on, all of them are Quakers.
Yeah, but that is one for further research.
Yeah.
Okay, we're winding down now. We have one from Shane Butcher. Said, I know the focus of this presentation is on St. Lucie, but I'd like to know if you will be doing a future presentation on St. John.
St. John,
Are you interested?
if you go online to YouTube, look up the untold story of Quakers or the untold story of Barbados. I did a little bit on St. John in one of those from what I can remember. So I use maps and so on to show how things changed and what they used to be like. So you could see a little bit about St. John up there. St. John is really an interest. Every parish is interesting. But St. Lucie is, I find, really quite interesting because it's so different, right? Very, very different.
So I think the final two, we have Marcia. Do you know if pre-1834-38, some fields were named with the surname of the white tenant or militia who was responsible for policing the persons enslaved and working a particular field?
There are a lot of fields with family names in it. So if you looked at St. Lucie, you're going to find Harris, like it was telling you already, Agard. But I think they represent land that was actually owned by those families or bordered on those families, land that those families own. There are many, many tenant fields all over in Barbados. I always heard that they were used, the Quakers hired a tenant, and instead of him having to go to militia, which he didn't want to, the tenant actually went to militia in his stead. So I've heard that. I was talking with Newlands Medford, and he's telling me, I told him about that, and he told me that might be the custom where plantations would farm out, as he would put it, land to a worker, a laborer, or a slave, and that might be how it got tenant, the name tenant. It's difficult. It would be real difficult. I don't think that anybody was put there to keep anybody in order. I think it just happened. I think it was a pretty disciplined society, and yeah, there are instances of trouble, but I can't think of I wouldn't be able to answer that question because I just haven't researched that.
Okay. Thanks. So we have
Okay.
Joyce, who she's saying it seems like the Graves family disappeared around the mid-1880s. I don't think that is true at all.
No.
Graves is very much alive in
Oh yes, Evelyn Graves, the politician. I think there were two Graveses that were politicians. Plenty Graves.
Graves. Mhm.
If you mean descendants of the original Graves, is probably yes, I would agree with that. But the Graves surname lives on. Don't fool yourself.
Yes. So we have a comment from Angela. We're just going to go through these very quickly. She's saying that on her mother's side are Benthams, and she's doing some work on them. And she suspects that they came originally from the Bentham brothers who started out in St. Lucie. You came across that name?
Yes, in fact, one of my ancestors is a Bentham. And about a Christchurch Bentham. And yes, there are Benthams in St. Lucie. There's a Benthams definitely in St. Lucie. But some of my ancestors are Benthams. I've always tried to look at that family, and that's a difficult. I don't know, for some reason I can't get that one solved at all. You never really.
You and Angela should have a conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Joyce is saying that her family is from Society St. John. And she's asking if the slave burial grounds are still there.
Society. I don't remember seeing a garden field there. But the garden fields is all over in St. John. There's one, let me see where I can think of as the nearest. I think the slaves at Society were buried at Holy Cross. I think that's what happened. And there's work being done at Holy Cross by a geophysicist with equipment and an archaeologist, Matt Riley. So look up Holy Cross burying ground. I seem to remember I saw an article recently by Matt Riley. So look up that because I think I think the burying ground at Society may have been at Holy Cross Church.
Okay, thanks for that. Matt is no stranger to this forum. So we'll check on that. Marcia is okay. But Marcia, we did speak. So we are going to move off Marcia because in the interest of time, David Ritsu wasn't able to, we haven't said anything from him as yet. Do you have records of the Cullimore family in Salters? I remember vaguely meeting my great-grandmother before she passed when I was 5.
I think there's an article, there got to be something by Ronnie Hughes, because I think somehow he's related. There's an Amaryllis Cullimore. She was then freed, and she got to own, I think she got to own Highgate Hall Plantation from, I can't remember if it's Robert Cullimore or something like that. So if you're a Cullimore from in that area, chances are you are coming down from that family. And there should be, I'm pretty sure I've seen something written about Amaryllis. Look for Amaryllis Cullimore and Ronnie Hughes and see what you find. I think that's the best I can do there.
What I can add to that for David, actually we have someone in this chat who wrote on Amaryllis Cullimore, Cynthia Cumberbatch, and we also have in the chat a member of the Cullimore family, Marcia. But there's an article written by Cynthia Cumberbatch in the Journal of the Barbados Museum and Historical Society, which they've released, you can always make contact with me that I can give you more details on that. Nancy, I think this will be our last one. Has anyone heard of Morals of St. Philip? I am trying to research my great-grandfather Harold Morrill, but no one seems to know him. I only find his Panama Canal record. I'm thinking he changed his name from his birth name, but how can I find out this information? I have no knowledge of his parents.
Go to familysearch.org.
Um,
Put in his surname, Murrow, and the place, Barbados, and see what it brings up. It would bring up to 1930. That's one thing I can tell you. I remember there was a Mr. Murrow who was at St. Ambrose Church when I was probably in my teens, but I don't think the Murrow name has disappeared from Barbados. But try familysearch.org, put in Murrow as the surname, and put in Barbados as the location, and then do a search and see what it shows. And then if you know the Christian name and it comes up, good. You can come forward then from there. The other thing to do is to look up obituaries online for Murrow, for the Murrow any Murrow family. Just put in Murrow obituary Barbados. And what you'll find is that if it exists, usually Bajans try to be very specific in their saying, well, this family is related, this family, this family, this family. So you may be lucky if you try the obituary way. That gives you a lot of information.
Just to add to that, when these persons left Barbados, if they went through the official channels and so on, a lot of them registered, but to leave Barbados, you had to register at District A. And those District A registers are at the Barbados Department of Archives. Sometimes they're called the Panama registers because a lot of the entries are for persons going to Panama. And those entries sometimes give some additional information, like sometimes the next of kin or so on. So the person, Nancy, you can email the Barbados Department of Archives, and if the Panama record that you found give a name for when the person arrived on the isthmus, you can give them that information and see if they can assist you with additional information from the Panama registers. Okay, so I think we are going to end here today. If anyone else wants to make a comment or ask a question, feel free to contact me by email, library@barbmuse.org.bb. So library@barbmuse.org.bb. And if you need to make contact with John, I will pass on the information.
Okay.
So thank you all so much for participating. It has been a very interactive session. And John, thank you so much for the information. It was very, very interesting. I think we've all learned a lot.
Thanks. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a great deal. I like the questions.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to leave, closing remarks?
Not really. I think we as a country gotta watch how we are developing the land, because we don't even realize, we don't even know where the burials are or could be, and you end up really being disrespectful to past ancestors. So I think we have to start making some noise to the government with that.
Okay, thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, audience, for your participation. I also want to thank our technical team, Anastasia and Chantel. And just to let you know that our next meeting will be a joint session with the museum's history group. And this is scheduled for February 27th, when Dr. Seth Camille will speak on the Barbados-New York connection, enslavement and exchange in the Middle Colonies, 1651 to 1750. And I think that this is a good follow-on from John's presentation today, because he talked a lot about those connections, especially those commercial connections. So that would be our February 27th talk. And what will be interesting about that, this talk, it will be in person here in the Trevor Carmichael Wall Garden at 6 p.m. on February 27th. But it will also be carried on Zoom and Facebook Live. So we are not forgetting our Facebook and Zoom audience. But we want those of you who will be asking for in-person meetings to come out in your numbers. And so we look forward to seeing you then on the 27th. So thank you all again, John, audience, technical team. Thank you so much, and bye for now.